everyone. Remember that old game show with Monty Hall, Let's Make a Deal?
Yes.
Well, we're not going to do that. But I do need some fabric. Anybody have any fabric?
I have some.
Fabric. How about over here? Yep. Awesome. Well, on today's quilt show, we're going to show you how bits and pieces of fabric can make beautiful results with improvisational patchwork. Up next with Maria Schell.
Yay!
It's a new day on the Quilt Show with your co-hosts, Alex Anderson and Ricky Timms.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Quilt Show. We're so glad that you're joining us. We're having a great day today with improvisational patchwork, really.
Totally.
Absolutely. Our guest today is going to be Maria Schell, and not only does she do improvisational patchwork, but she also does community quilts. Now, Alex, the quilt that you're going to share with the top of the show is not totally improvisational, but there's a story behind it. So let us know.
Right. Okay. So first of all, I love antique quilts, as you do too, you know. And Julie Silber has a great Facebook page, and a quilt came up, and I almost had a salmon moment with it. Let's take a look at this quilt.
They don't even know what your salmon moment is.
Oh,
when we go to eat, if there's salmon on the menu, and she looks at it, and she goes, "Oh, salmon!" So that's an Alex Anderson thing.
When I saw this quilt, take a look at this quilt, Ricky. It's absolutely fabulous, and it's weird. It's really weird.
Well, it has some quirkiness to it, but I really like it. And I love, you know, like the old songs from the 60s or 70s, and they get a remix. You're taking this old quilt, and you're going to remix it a little bit.
Yeah, and when I looked at the picture, I didn't have the quilt. It was a little too unorganized for me to even figure out how to do it, okay? So I just made some decisions. Well, let's go take a look at the quilt back here.
Wasn't there some structure?
Well, there was. Let's take a look at that back here, okay? So what I realized was that the structure was there were rows going down, which...
So vertical bars, essentially, that were somehow or another patchworked, but all built in vertical bars.
And I pulled the colors from a wonderful piece of fabric that I had probably bought a couple years ago, and I put it up in the center, because, you know, you work on your design wall, and let's take a look at it. It just went flat. And John came in and goes, "It doesn't work." And I'm like, "Oh, yes, it does." And he's like, "No, it doesn't."
Sometimes it's good to have an outside eye.
Yeah.
All right, but let's talk about, because I really, really like where you went here.
Okay.
All right, so these vertical bars, that was all making sense to you, right? And then you put in like a panel?
It was just a beautiful piece of cloth.
Because the original quilt had like that chintz in the middle, right? So just, that would do it and be done, call it a day.
So, okay, it doesn't work. So what I do is I take my pieces and I run to the local quilt shop to see if there's another piece that can go in it. Nothing, because there was there was nothing with this teal and this kind of salmon, color in the whole thing. So then the quilt shop owner, in between stitches in Livermore, Melissa goes, "Well, why don't you do a block that has these components in it?" And that's always a good tip. If you don't know what to do, think of taking those pieces.
And in this case, it's bars.
And
half-square triangles.
Great. How easy is that? So I went home, and I made this, and I held it up, and I'm going, that does not work.
Yeah.
And the reason it doesn't work is because the size and scale of it is too big.
Even if you quilted beautiful quilting in there, it's still not going to help.
Look at that it's no good.
No, thank you.
So then I put in this square here, and I happen to have these hearts from another project.
Oh, nice. And they're kind of matching the colors.
Yeah.
But this is where the improvisational part came in for you, because you're letting the quilt have a voice.
Right, and at the end, it really had a voice, and I whipped it into shape. But
we'll talk about that in a moment, right?
So let's just talk about the blocks and how easy they are to make, and the cutting numbers, because truly, it's easy.
Okay.
So the horizontal's horizon. The vertical, This block finishes 8 by 8. So raw, it's 8.5 by 8.5, which means these strips were cut 2.5 by 8.5.
Right.
And I literally strip piece them and then just chop
And
them
then
up.
just chop them. So you had long lengths of
Yeah.
this and chopped it into 8.5 units.
And same thing, then I'd cut out some of these. So I cut these at 2.5, so it would finish each of these 2 by 2 by 2 by 2.
And now you can just mix match them. You can turn them this
That's
way,
exactly what
turn
I
them
did.
this way.
It's exactly
and
what I
if you
did.
use a lot of different fabrics, it's not going to look like you have pre-pieced all those.
And then I don't know why I decided this, but I decided to make the half square triangles a different size. Like I should have done them 4.5 because that would have fit, or 4 because that would have
fit half and half.
But
or even 2.
Yeah, but in my brilliant moment, I decided to make them 3.
Okay.
So actually, okay, so these were cut at 3 7/8. Then you draw the line down the center and stitch on each side.
1/4 inch on each side.
And yay, there you have that.
Right, but don't let people that don't know, you have to cut out
down
the
the
center.
Thank you.
And that yields 2 of these guys.
Right.
All right, can we walk back to the quilt?
Yes, we can.
I want to
Because
talk about
you
this
had
makes sense.
questions, yeah.
Well, this unit, which is the 2-inch squares and the 8-inch bars, right? That becomes 10 inches.
Right.
So in this case, it's 10 inches. That's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And that's where your 3-inch came
3
in.
goes into 60.
20 times.
Right.
So that gives you a bar that's the same height.
So that's how I did that. We'll talk about the border in a bit because we had
that was a whole
that
nother
was a whole
bourbon.
other thing. So I learned this from my friend Dee Christopher. This is really cool. This is a Select Applistick, and it's meant for, in my life, raw edge repositioning on your design wall.
So you're not having to pin it. It stays in place. You can make your design choice before you fuse it.
Right. Well, you can get finished applique, not raw edge, using this stuff.
And that's what you're going to show.
That's what I'm going to show. So I've got a piece here. One side is the fusey side, and then one side's the flat side. And I fold it, and I just cut myself a heart. That's how free-form this is. And, let's see, here we go. And remember, whatever the cut is what the finished edge is going to be. So let's see if that's funky or it's good.
It looks pretty good.
Yeah, it's a couple
hey,
bumps.
Alex,
Yes.
can I have your heart?
Yes, Ricky.
Here you go.
Here, give it back. Okay.
That one didn't work very well. You guys, y'all be nicer to me today. You guys.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fuse down the shiny side to the fabric, okay?
Yep.
And I am just hoping we turned this iron on, and we did. And the thing with fusing, no matter what fusible you're using, you want to make sure that it cools before you cut out the fabric.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're good. I have a little Scotch tape on there, and it's giving me, I'll do a little bit more. Then what I'm going to do once it cools is I'm going to cut a 1/4 inch around the edge. I'm gonna get cool, get cool. I learned that from Laura Wasilowski, by the way.
Yeah, it does need to cool.
Yeah, so now I'm gonna go like this. I'm just gonna cut around 1/4 inch.
And it doesn't have to be perfect 1/4 inch. You're just eyeballing a 1/4 inch.
I don't want it to be a 1/2 inch.
But it could be a little less than 1/4 inch.
Yeah,
you know me and my little less than 1/4 inch stuff.
Yeah, and I'm feeling like I have to iron it a little bit more, so bear with me.
It's not totally stuck yet.
No.
Okay.
But that's it. I'm letting the quilt talk to me, the block. And the great thing about those hearts is I knocked them out when I was watching TV, and I didn't even know what I was going to do with.
Yeah, of course.
You
Yeah,
know?
you just make components that you can play with at some point.
Right. I think we'll be good now.
All right.
That's the magic thing.
Yeah, that's the magic.
Okay, so it's not quite cool. We're getting there. What do you want to talk about?
Oh, I don't know. Let's talk about how cool it is. Hey, it feels pretty cool to me.
Okay, and I learned this from you on another quilt show. When you have to get paper off a fusible, it's a pain in the rear. So you just take a pin and score it, and then it just comes right off.
Yay. You guys know that trick.
Yeah,
Yes.
love it, love it, love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you've got the sticky on this side, and you can just, with your fingers, fold it around it. When you get to the curve, don't fold it all the way to the raw edge. Just fold the edge. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And
move your finger and show them that.
I'm stuck to it here.
Yep.
Yeah, so I leave a little ruffle.
Yep.
And then when I get nice and smooth around, then I can go and take the ruffle part and pat it down.
So that it makes little pleats and creases.
And this is how I used to do it with freezer paper and spray starch. It's the same principle, but the bottom line is when you're done, I'm not going to go all the way around.
So you have to snip that little
Yeah,
area.
you snip this part in here. Thank you. It's just exactly like the other. So go like that. You could also use your little Rose's tool too if you wanted.
The apple quick sticks or
By holding it down and rolling it over too. It depends on how complicated the shape is, but I honestly probably wouldn't get too complicated.
I think the smaller and more tedious it gets, the tools are really helpful.
Yes. So there we go.
Fabulous.
Yeah. And then when I had them all made, I could go up on my thing and just put them up
then
there.
stick them.
Stick them on there.
And then finishing them. Did you fuse
have
them
my
and leave
heart.
them? I do have your heart. That looks good on the blue.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, my question though is then how do you stitch it? What did you use?
I just used the blanket stitch and made it really, really, really small, and it just looks like it's finished, okay?
Right.
So now let's talk about the border.
Right, let's go look at the border.
Okay.
Because I think this is really important.
Okay,
All right.
so here we've got the 60 inches going this way, and so these are 6 by 3, so it fit on beautifully.
So yeah, that would be 10 of them because there's
Right.
6 inches.
But I didn't want to do the math on the top, and so
Well, then you wanted to be the same size, kind of.
I kind of did. I just was also being lazy too.
Heart.
It wasn't cute. Okay, so what I want to show you is what happened. The corners turned out weird.
Okay.
So let's take a look at the corners. I have a picture that I took while I was making the quilt. On the upper left and the bottom
Yeah,
right,
it's not-
it was funky. And because it was so improvisational, I thought it will be okay.
It'll be okay. It'll be all cool.
I took it to my mini group and they said, no,
No, something
fix
wrong
it.
with that.
Okay, so this is how I fixed it. I took a big piece of square fabric, let's take a look, and I ironed it to find the diagonal. Then you can see through there, you can see where I'm going to exactly hit the corner of that rail.
Right.
And then I stitched it down. Let's take another look, right on that. And then I just
You cut off the
cut
excess.
it off, flipped it over,
flipped it out.
ironed it, and there it is. And then I squared it
Isn't
up.
that great?
I got their attention.
Now.
I got their attention. Their hearts going boom.
boom, boom, boom. But now, here's what I said. Because I was looking at this with Alex.
Yeah.
This really worked because these are all the same size as the main ones on the side. But when you get up to the top, this triangle isn't quite right. But you don't care.
I bet you didn't see it. Did you see it? No.
And that's where I know that math can really come into quilting, and you really have to figure it out mathematically.
Right.
But it's also where improvisation will come in because you just work it out the way it needs to work. Out.
What's on me? Oh, it's a button.
It's a button. It's a button, Alex.
Oh, thank you, Ricky.
So, everyone, that was fun. Did you enjoy that?
Yeah.
I did a lot. And speaking of improvisational patchwork, we're going to have so much fun when we come back with Maria Schell and improvisational patchwork. Don't go anywhere.
Bernina, made to create.
We're talking today about improvisational patchwork. And Alex, I will say a lot of people think that's a scary thing. And sometimes that it's maybe disorganized or chaotic and you don't know where you're going. I think you're going to find a whole different take on improvisational patchwork when you meet our guest today. Her name is Maria Schell, all the way from Anchorage, Alaska.
Welcome.
Hey, Maria. Thank you for coming. Now, I recall I got to have a little interview with you in Houston last year, actually. And so we're so glad to have you on the show.
Glad to
talk
be
about
here.
your quilts.
Well, I walked in and I just went, whoa. And I know Shelley, our producers, whoa. I love your work. What are you known for up in your neck of the woods and throughout the whole Saukwa scene?
Well, color, pattern, and repetition, and really embracing the power of the traditional quilt block as a unit of discovery.
That's amazing. So you're really rooted in tradition.
Absolutely.
Was that where you started, in tradition?
I started, we were living in Valdez, Alaska, which is a little town in Alaska. It's the snowiest sea level town in North America.
Wow.
Wow.
There are places that are snowier, but no one lives there.
Oh, you're a brave one then.
Yeah, and so we take our hobbies really seriously, and I took up quilt making. I'd always sewn, but worked in a little quilt shop there. I took my first class, and I was teaching probably 6 months later.
Great.
Yeah.
Well,
I want to take a look at the
Yeah,
first quilt.
because it's not traditional now. So let's look at this first quilt. Tell us about it.
It's called Wall of Sound, and for those of you who might know a little bit about the Grateful Dead, that's what they called their sound system. And I really wanted it to just be like, boom, this big visual feast of pattern and repetition and color, and I do a lot of, I guess old school we call it fussy cut, you know, of different prints.
Look at that, Ricky.
That is just, and I get the boom. I mean,
Yeah.
it is like in your face. I love that. And what is the block that is based on?
It has several different names. I like to call it square and a square. So, or you could think of it as an uneven 9-patch.
Okay,
I see.
okay,
Sure.
sure.
So it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 spaces, but sometimes it's also built with just a single strip down the middle. And I use those pieces sometimes as part of the block, but then the way I manipulate the color or the pattern, it becomes the grid or the sashing. So it is the block, but it also is the sashing.
Yeah, I get that. And now on the next quilt, when we look at it, it has some of the same similar characteristics.
Well, it's the same block.
There you go. It is.
Wow, it is.
But it's manipulated. Like the first one has it's a 9-patch in itself. There's 9 different blocks, whereas the second one is 4. There's 4 patches with one strip down the middle that's actually the same grid, so it reads as a grid.
So when you start a quilt like this, you just go, I'm going to make one little block and see where it takes me, and then put it on your design wall, or is it a bigger picture in your head?
With the second quilt, which is called Tribe, a lot of times what I'll do is I think of myself as a bit maker. I will cut some fabric. A lot of times I work from whatever bits are on my leftover from the last
from the previous project.
Right,
Wow.
and I'll just start piecing them together, and if I get a color combination I like, then I might multiply that out, and then I'll start putting those bits on the design wall and arranging them again. I have, though, with those particular quilts, made a decision that I'm going to work within the framework of that traditional quilt block. So whatever bits I make, I'm going to put them into that grid shape.
Now, you had the opportunity to study under Nancy Crow. How did that come about?
Amazing thing. It's called the Rasmussen Foundation. It's an organization in Alaska that funds art, health, and culture for all of Alaska. And they're one of the few organizations in the United States that fund artists directly. So I put in a proposal to study with her for 3 weeks, and they funded that proposal.
3 weeks.
Straight, yeah. And it's kind of, at that time it was really unheard of, but there are, Nancy is getting older. And if you want to study with her, do it now, because she's not going to be teaching forever.
Now, how many people were in that class?
Well, there was, the way she sets up her classes, it's week-long study, but that week builds upon each week. So I took the first 3 weeks of study, and there were some people that were with me for 1 week, and there was one other person that was there for 3. But,
That's great.
yeah.
Wow. I know also that that whole experience of being in Anchorage, I would think that leads to color. I mean, my experience in going to Anchorage is that Alaska embraces color as much as possible. Has that infiltrated you any?
Well, I think a lot of my colors, it's more I love indigenous artwork, and I think
Yes.
that the Alaskan indigenous artwork with the pattern and the repetition and the juxtaposition of different colors and getting those colors to vibrate is something I'm really interested in. And, you know, we do have long, dark winters, and color is really good to have around you.
Right.
And speaking of juxtaposition of colors, the next piece is bars. But I noticed when I came in and saw this one, how those colors vibrate by mixing what we call in art after effect. The after color starts messing with your eye and creating new colors when you look at the quilt.
I'm always trying to do that. If someone says that, I'm like, yes.
Yay.
I did, yeah. It was
Nice.
successful.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that before we rolled camera either, did
No,
we?
we
So
did
it's
not.
working. That's
Yes, thank
fabulous.
you.
So tell us more about that quilt.
Basically, I call them designer stripes, and we're going to be talking about this later, but the making your own stripes and how to get color, and it's, you know, it's just bold and graphic, and it's not particularly complicated, but I think successful in
No,
its-
but you've nailed it on that.
Yeah.
And another thing that you do are community quilts, and I believe the next one is based on that. Is that true?
No, the next one is called Colors Unfurled.
Okay.
AKA If Betsy Ross Had My Stash.
You really have to look at the full thing to see that that
Yeah.
is the American flag.
Yeah, it is
That's
the American
great.
flag. And what happened is I was listening to the presidential, it was when Obama was nominated to be the presidential candidate. And I was really excited about the fact that we had an African-American candidate running for president, and I wanted to celebrate that. So I got into my bit bin, which are these little, you know, leftovers from my old quilts that didn't make it into a quilt. And I was like, I'm gonna make an American flag, and I'm gonna start with these stars. So those stars were all left over from other projects over the years. And then once I got the stars made, I realized it's gonna be a really big quilt because the
Right.
stars are, that section
Yeah.
is the size of a baby blanket. And then I built out all the 13 stripes. And each stripe represents something different about America. And really, I just wanted to celebrate our diversity and
Great.
all the things that are.
I love that. And then the next one, is that a whole cloth quilt?
It is a whole cloth quilt, and it's called Albert Hoffman's Obit. And it is, I'm a long arm quilter, and I wanted to, you know, see if I could make my own take on a traditional whole cloth quilt. And it is, I used Arfil 28 weight thread, and each color has its own motif. So all of the yellows are feathers, and all of the oranges are
look at
eyeballs.
that.
That's
Okay,
nice.
got
Yeah,
that.
and you know,
It
was
works.
Yeah, it was an award winner back in its day. It placed both at the International Quilt Festival and at Paducah.
That's wonderful, beautiful. All right, the last quilt we're going to talk about. Tell us about this.
That is the community quilt,
This
correct?
is the community
Okay.
quilt. They were built at similar times. The flag, and you can see they've both got those leftover stars in them.
Okay.
So I've made quite a few community quilts for organizations and communities, and this one is made for the community of McCarthy, which is in the Wrangell St. Elias National Park, and we spend time there. And it was part of a extended writing workshop where we not only did we do writing, but we had 2 visual artists on staff, and we had a performance artist. So the students made a book. They did performance art, they wrote essays, and they made the quilt blocks that go into this quilt.
Now, one of the things that we've learned about you is that quilting was something that came along later. But what did you do, or what were you trained to do, and how has that come full circle?
Yeah, well, I have an undergraduate degree in journalism, and I have a master's in creative writing. So I always thought I was going to be a writer. And then we moved to Valdez, and I'd always sewn, but I just didn't think that that was my career path. Like, how do you become a professional sewer? I just didn't.
Well, did any of us?
No, it's
Really?
really easy. You know,
Yeah.
growing up in a working class rural environment in rural Kansas, I didn't know anyone that made a living by being a creative, really. And so I thought the most creative thing I can do is be a writer, because I know I can get a job as a writer. And then I made my first quilt, and I'm like, I don't want to be a writer. I want to be a quilt maker. And I really struggled with that. And I'm like, why did I waste all this time on writing? And then, you know, it keeps going around. It's like, at some point, you know, I'm making these quilts, showing them in exhibitions, and then I started writing a blog. And all those skills, like, are exactly what I needed. And then to write the book, and it just all, like,
Fit
comes together.
And what is your blog? Oh, Jinx on Coat.
Yeah, my blog is called Tales of a Stitcher.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
great. I love this. I love the solids, and I love how they turn into all these magical patterns. And that's exactly what Maria is going to teach us when we come back. So don't go anywhere. I know you're excited to see this.
"16 colors, 16 needles. High-speed embroidery creating at up to 1,400 stitches per minute. An extra-large embroidery field, 400 by 350 millimeters. Patented narrow cylindrical lower arm, the smallest in the industry. The Bernina hook system. A fabric-based tension system. A library of 1,000 designs. Automatic thread trim. Adjustable presser foot height. The new Bernina E16, high-speed embroidery with true commercial quality. From the intuitive user interface and the smallest cylindrical embroidery arm in the industry to an impressive array of optional accessories, the E16 is the perfect partner for home, studio, or commercial projects. Applique command, rotation 190 and 180, bright LED lights, network up to 6 machines. E16 tension system. This unique system ensures threads are fed smoothly and with automatic tension adjustments for the same perfect quality on every sew out. Embroider confidently, knowing each stitch out will be as beautiful as you envision. The Bernina E16. The stuff dream machines are made of.
Welcome back, everyone. We're spending our day with Maria Schell. And Maria, I want to show everybody your new book. This is Improv Quilts. It is dynamic quilts made with line and shape.
Yes.
And I will say that when I look at your quilts today on the set, honestly, I know there's a lot of complexity to them, and a lot of people just looking at them go, I don't even know where to begin. But it really, in your case, you're going to break it down, and we're going to start with simple stripes.
Yep,
right?
It's all about, I make bits, and my bits frequently start with stripes, and then I'll put some stripes next to other stripes, and I just keep building and building. So the first type of stripe, I call it a simple stripe, and basically it is 2 colors, and I vary the width of the different stripes. You can make them with a ruler or without a ruler, depending upon what your final goal is.
Okay, let's look at this one first, because this is simple black and white, right?
Right.
And you'd think maybe that's a black and white fabric, and not that you couldn't buy black and white, but then you're not in control over the size of the stripe. Is that correct?
That's right. In fact, I've actually I've run out of a stripe, and I just made some of it myself and added it to the quilt.
And you can't even tell. But look at this. So you can see now that it's been pieced, even though the front of it may look like just a plain fabric. And these other stripes that you've done, they've left the black and white, and you're trying to find complementary colors or analogous colors or whatever that kind of work together to create.
And I'm also thinking about, like, this is kind of simple, the yellow and green together, but then when I put it next to the red and yellow, they're both doing particular jobs in creating contrast with each other.
The red and the blue.
Red and blue,
Right.
but then I might piece it next to the yellow and green, and then I got all this other stuff going on.
All right, so as I look at these 4 sets, and everybody, I think you can tell these are 4 sets of pieced stripes. Tell me about your thought process on choosing like wide yellow, narrow green, wide yellow, narrow green, or here, they're all the same. So when do you make that decision?
It's kind of random, and I'll just, I'll pick 2 colors, and I might think, oh, this will look really good with a lot of yellow and just a sliver of green, so I'll make that up. But I don't necessarily have a purpose for it, other than I like how it looks as it is. And then I'm like, I'm gonna make these exactly the same, because in this case, they're gonna vibrate. And that is something.
That's because of the
evenness of they're the same size, and the way they are color-wise next to each other.
And they're opposites kind of on the color wheel, and they're about the same tonality, meaning they're not light and dark like the gray and the yellow really create a contrast, but these don't, so they vibrate. They fight each other in some respect. And my next question is, do you just make these not even knowing where they're going to go? Do you ever just sew strips and just sew strips and sew strips? strips?
If in a perfect world, that's probably all I do. I like to make these bits, these stripes that are then I'm going to turn them into other bits. Yes.
Right. All right. So you said that there are a couple of ways to go about it. One of them is to do
The simple stripe, which would just be a 2-color stripe. And there's one thing I wanted to tell you at this point that we haven't talked about is that when you build a stripe like this with 2 colors, if you have one color start with one color and end with another color, you can then cut the stripe into a chunk and then sew it to the next one so that you start building a longer stripe.
Right.
Yes.
So that makes sense. So don't end with the color that you started with, end with the opposite.
Right. And that way you have the option of building it out.
All right. Now these I believe you call designer stripes.
I do call these designer stripes, and they're what I use to create the quilt Beachy. And basically I cut strips of fabric from selvage to selvage, and that's something else we should talk about. These are essentially strip sets, old school strip sets that traditional quilters have been making for decades. But instead of using a pattern, I am creating my own strip set, and I call it a designer, in this case, a designer stripe. And frequently these stripes have a repetition within the stripe. You can see that it's green, yellow, purple, white, green. Yeah.
And that's what's going on with all of these designer stripes. Now, Beachy, which is the quilt that we saw earlier, and we'll take a look at that. That is a designer stripe quilt, right?
Yes.
And in that, you create a recipe of some sort?
Right. So each stripe was designed individually, and I'll pull a palette. Like I've got these fabrics here, and I pulled them out and I'm thinking about them. One of the things I do when I pull a palette is I like to fold my fabrics like this, and I like to show about the same amount of each fabric. And what that does is it gives me a good visual. Then I'm going to look to see, this is kind of mushy because these two are pretty close together. And then I'll move them around a little bit and see where I can get something that's really interesting going on. I'll do that. I might take a photograph, and then I might mess around again, come back, take another photograph. And then once I get what I like, I'm going to say, oh, I want a big chunk of blue on either end. I'll write that down. So I build the stripe.
And maybe then a smaller dark navy.
Yes.
And then a wider lavender, maybe the same. And then, so you're actually giving yourself a visual proportion of the stripes before you've ever cut them out.
Right. And
that is good information.
I will write them down, and I'll assign them a cutting width. And I might go back in, and I do this sometimes, say I belt this stripe here, and this purple line really looks too clunky to me. So what I'm gonna do then is I would come back in. If you take your rotary cutter and just cut right along that seam and then restitch it, you've all of a sudden made that purple line much more elegant than it was before.
And you didn't have to pick it out.
No. Yes.
I like that part.
Unsewing.
That's a good one. All right, let's talk now about the more organic version of doing these designer sets. Okay?
Right. So these are the ones made with a ruler and
measured pretty much.
And then the other option would be to cut them without a ruler and then piece them together, and you're going to get a much more organic line than you do.
I'm going to turn this because I think the camera can see this, and all of you guys, yeah, I mean, it's a little narrower. You're still following the formula, but you're just cutting freely.
Yes. The one thing to remember if you do decide to do your designer stripes without a ruler is that these final 2 pieces here, you want to give yourself some extra room that you can lob off in case you want to square them up, because at any point we can use our ruler or not use our ruler. And so I might want to take these and make them all 6 by 6 inches. And if I've left myself a little bit of wiggle room on the outside, I can do that.
All right, and here is that same example where you've left a lot of fabric out here, knowing that this is going to steal the show, but you've given yourself a little freedom out there. I think that's great. Now, what you just said about making 6 by 6 kind of relates to this strip set, right?
Yes.
So here's the set. Now, do you care that it's really wide over here and it kind of got narrow here? I mean, does that, how does that play?
Because I'm gonna narrow it down if I want to. Like at any point, I may want to continue on with this organic line when I attach it to this. But at some point, I may want it to actually be a certain
Now, just
size.
for the sake of people that maybe haven't done improvisation, would you cut those at the same time, or would you just overlap the gray one and just make the green one follow the gray one? How would you join those, or would you just leave this straight and press it?
If I'm working with a smaller organic shape like this, I'm probably just going to piece it. And the one key thing about piecing for me is that to get that curvy kind of line, I'm going to follow I'm gonna pair these as I go. I'm not gonna, what a lot of quilters do that are traditional quilters that have used a ruler is that they're gonna try and compensate so that they match up exactly.
Right.
And I'm not going to compensate, I'm going to exaggerate so that I get that curve.
I get it. All right, so on the long one though, if we were to join these together, you've got sort of a straight edge and a wonky edge. Do you then straighten this one or do you wonky that one?
I would make this the line I want. So wonky or straight.
Right.
And then I'm gonna lay it on top. If it's
And use
really
it as
long.
the cutting guide.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to make sure that we're
Yes.
on the same page.
Yes.
All right, so on this one, if this piece got cut into these units, how would you then sew these together? I don't mean how physically, but would you lay vertical, horizontal, vertical? Is that the idea here, or is it to offset them? What's the goal? What's the goal with these pieces?
Well, anything goes. I think there are times when I have made them all the same size and formed a nice little 9 patch with them. There are other times when I've cut them all into different sizes of chunks and thrown them on the design wall and rearranged them there.
And there's no rule. There's no right answer. The quilt's
No.
going to tell you what it
Yeah.
wants. All right, so that's I'm sorry, I'm going to get the terminology wrong. The simple stripes,
Right.
the designer stripes
Stripes.
with the ruler, and then designer stripes that are
Without the
ruler, so they're more organic, and I think that's...
This is just an example of kind of a designer stripe where I left the white on one end and the red on the other so that
you
I could
could cut
chunk it
in-
out just like I would do with a simple stripe.
I see that. So this ended with the white, right? So there's the unit, and then red to white, red to white. So it just repeated.
Yes.
So you can create these. All right. So now let's go to. I love these because this kind of makes my heart sing. Let's talk about what these are. You called these.
I call them short rows because instead of working salvage to salvage, as we've been doing with these, we're going to take some
Here they go.
strips.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are the strips that everybody threw around earlier today.
During
So,
Justin's cold
right.
open.
So I'd select my palette just like I did for the designer stripe, and then I'd probably lay these out, and I'm going to take my ruler. You see what size these are, and I know I'm going to work a little bit bigger because I'm going to end up. They're going to get smaller. So
Yeah, and before we go on, because we see this whole block, but what we're really talking about right now is just this one unit right here, so that one unit doesn't have a repetition the way the pieces that we've discussed before.
Right.
They're totally random.
Yep. So I select the palette, then I chunk it out. By chunking it out, I mean I'm deciding that they're all going to be about 5 inches. So I'm making all of my pieces like this into
Right.
5-inch bits.
And then you just lay them out.
No, I go to the sewing machine with a
Oh.
big pile of them. It looks like this at my sewing machine, like that. And
Right.
then I
But
say,
they're all 5
"Oh,"
inches.
Yes, and I say, oh, pretty gray, you look so nice next to that orange. And I sew them together.
And you're just sewing.
Pairing them at the machine, always searching for beautiful pairings.
Right.
And
Now-
then I pair them again and again.
And these are similar in width, but you could be more dramatic in your widths.
Yes, like
the way
this one.
this is. It's a really wide, narrow, medium, wide, and so forth.
Yes.
So that you've got all those options. And then again, it's back to building whatever you want to build as that being a piece of fabric
Right.
for your block. And that's what this is too, right?
Yep, and the thing that makes them interesting is that it's not predictable to the eye. All of the blacks are not the same width.
Right.
And they're not all next to the cream. It varies, and that variation is exciting for the eye.
That's awesome. Now, we go to another thing that you call tracks. Is that right?
Tracks, yes.
And you know what? Before I show these tracks, would you build a track? Do we have the fabric that you can cut
Yes.
and
Okay,
show
so-
it how?
right.
Show us the basic way to do that.
Okay, so building a track, the first thing would be that you'd make these simple stripes, like we talked about earlier in the segment, but I probably wouldn't repeat them out like that. I'd just keep them a simple stripe like this. So that's my simple stripe, and then I'm gonna have a second one that I'm going to then mate them. And a lot of times what I do with these tracks is that the stripes don't go the same direction.
Okay.
So I'm gonna probably just do this using the lines on my mat, but not using a ruler. So I've counted, I'm gonna make them all 4 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
I'm gonna cut a bunch of these.
It's like slicing pizza. You don't need a ruler to do that. Right?
Right.
The audience is going, well, I use a ruler to slice my pizza. No, you don't. Okay? You just
So
cut, right?
I make these all 4
Uh-oh, that
inches.
one's 5.
I know, it's hard to do this in
Sure.
front of Ricky Timms.
No, it's okay. Let's just change it to 4. Can you change it to 4, or do you want to leave it 5?
Yeah, okay.
All right.
We'll change it to 4. All right. So these are all, I cut them 4 by 4.
Ooh, what a fun thing to have for another project.
Yeah,
See, it's not
That's
wasted.
how my next quilt starts. It's right
That's
there.
great.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with 2 inches right now, but I might, after I stitch, cut them down to be a little bit skinnier later.
Okay, which you can always do, right?
You can always do.
If I don't like it, I'll just chop off the seam allowance and sew it in.
Right,
No unpicking, no unsewing.
Oh, I want these units to go this way, yeah.
Oh, nice.
So this is, then you stitch it together and it becomes a track.
A track. And that's not hard, people. Okay?
No.
It starts looking complicated, but getting there. Look at all of these that relate to that. All right? Look, they now start becoming, what was the quilt with boom? Boom.
Wall of sound.
Wall of sound. Yeah, they start becoming that wonderful, wonderful wall of sound. This just speaks to me so much. All right, so we get this idea. What I want to do is now talk about your sketchbook, because by just sketching an overall roadmap, knowing that you've created your stripes or your tracks or whatever, this can be a roadmap for a quilt.
Right. It is, and I just, I sketch things a lot just to see if there's potential in that sketch. Like this one down here, these are all these tracks, really, that I've
just done in rows, really.
Yes,
That's
and
just
it's a
rows.
simple bar quilt.
That is fabulous.
Yeah.
You're starting to see what we're talking about now, don't you? It's all coming together. For the big ta-da, I want to just show some of your quilts here.
Okay.
So this is a quilt with an example of the tracks.
Yes, so this is part of my color grid series. It's based on the traditional quilt block, square and a square. And I've built, they're just a series of tracks that instead of building them in straight rows, as I did here, I am building them around a square.
Kind of like a half log cabin.
Yeah.
Except that one's kind of pieced.
This was early on when I thought I needed to
But you
miter,
didn't
but
need
I
to.
have figured out how
gone
to not
from
do
there.
that.
Yeah, forget the mire. All right, and look at this. I mean, I just love this. These repeated units, but by using the various colors.
Right, this unit is the same as this unit, but it's just 2 colors. And then these are, I'm pretty sure like this bit here is actually this bit, but I've
look
done.
at that. So yeah, I mean, look at that. I mean, there's
left over from one thing
something
that
like that. And now I get it. This is like a little 9 patch with like a little cross, and that's what you've done here. Only it's more embellished, so to speak.
And this, these are the stripes.
All done with solid fabric. As we continue to look at these, Maria has got some wonderful opportunities coming up next for you to learn about how to go about spending time with your community, making quilts with people that are not really quilt makers, right?
Yep,
That's
right.
what we're going to do when we come back. I love these solid fabrics. I think the patterns are wonderful.
On the next quilt show, the last time Katie Fowler was on our show, she cut up one of her quilts.
Why?
Wait. What will she do this time?
Katie loves to use the story of Alice in Wonderland as an allegory for many of the creative things she tries in quilting.
So we're going to go further down the rabbit hole with Katie to join her for a Mad Hatter coloring party you will not want to miss.
Plus, all these mandala quilts she's making, how does she finish them? Well, she has some tricks to go from Tweedledee to Tweedledone.
And Ricky has baby bunting all sewn up. He'll show you how.
Another magical hour of fun and learning with colorful Katie Fowler. Join us.
It's my turn with Maria. And Maria, we would be remiss to not show your studio in Anchorage. Is it in your house?
It is in my house. And advice I always give to people is if you're going to have a long arm, buy the long arm and then buy the house. Right, which is what we did. And so the studio is, I have a long arm, I have several sewing stations, and almost all of it's on wheels.
See, I like that a lot. Then you can configure it however you need to do when you're working.
And clean.
Right. Oh, really? Is that how you do it?
Okay, well, you can get underneath things. Yeah, so I've got storage that's on wheels, everything's on wheels, and I move it around in it.
Now, you have a heart for communities, and I want to talk about More Place specifically.
Yeah, so 2014, I had an artist residency at the McCall Center for Art and Innovation. And part of that residency is community engagement. And I knew that I would be making a quilt with members of the community, but I really didn't know who at the time.
And where is this?
This is in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay.
So Charlotte is a housing first city, which means it's a new approach to homelessness where chronically homeless individuals are giving housing with wraparound services. And it turned out when I showed up there, they're like, would you be interested in making a quilt with the residents of Moore Place? And most of these people had indicators. To be chronically homeless includes, chances are there's addiction, abuse, post-traumatic stress syndrome. So the individuals that are living at Moore Place have really fallen through the cracks. They've been given housing and these wraparound services. And by the time I had the artist, we had an unveiling of this community quilt that I made. Several of the people I worked with couldn't attend the opening because they had jobs.
Right.
So the program works. It's an amazing program. And what I did is I met with them once a week. We made tote bags and pillowcases, and we talked about how we might put a community quilt together. I've been making these community quilts since I started quilt making. It was an excuse. I'll make you a community baby quilt. And so that's what I think. I mean, that's the story of one community quilt.
Right. And what you'll be sharing with us today is that Maria's going to show us really how you can take people with zero knowledge and have them be successful. I just love this. So what do we do?
So you do prep work beforehand. You want to make sure that nobody is ironing fabric to the ironing board, which can happen if you don't do this prep roast. So the first thing I do is that I will this is the foundation that each participant gets a square of fabric that they're going to use to build their quilt block. I like them to be all different sizes.
Oh, okay.
Because that forces me to work off the grid.
Okay, so they make the block and then you go home and put the whole thing together.
Yes.
So it's really quite random here. Do you always use semi-solids?
I do. I use solids, semi-solids, or prints that read like solids. And the reason I do that is that when they iron whatever their surface design is on top of this block, there's going to be a greater chance that people are going to see it. You know, if they have a polka dotted background and then they glued some polka dots on top of it, it's not going to read as a clear design.
And we're basically talking fused.
This is all fused.
Okay.
In the quilts that I make that are community-based, all of the fused blocks are made by the participants. All of the pieced work is made by me.
Okay, perfect.
So once I get these blocks made, and I'll make like 20 to bring to a party or to a gathering.
I love that, a party.
Yes, because you could do it as a baby shower. I have done it,
Right.
And everybody comes to the shower and makes their quilt block, and then in one case, a girlfriend of mine, she became a quilter after she had the baby, and so then we pieced the quilt together.
Another one's born.
Yes, okay, so I usually choose, so they've got these background surfaces that they're gonna build their quilt design on, and I use Wonder Under to prep, I don't know, 40, 50, however many sheets you can.
Okay, so let's take them back. So you pre-do all this, but you said while we were getting prepared, there's a boo-boo here. Let's talk about that.
So when you prepare these, I use Wonder Under or some other fusible that's got a backing to it. I'm going to cut the fabric to be approximately 10 inches wide by 18 inches long, and that is because my fusible, I'll buy it on the bolt, is 18 inches
But
wide.
let's talk about that, because you pointed that out to me. Mine often looks like this even on its best day, okay? So you want to avoid...
Ideally, you're going to take that back of your fabric before you put the fusible on it, and you're going to clean it. You're just going to make sure it's nice and smooth, there's no wrinkles, there's no threads. You're going to cut your fusible out. You want your fabric to be slightly larger than your fusible. You're going to adhere your fusible to the back side of your fabric. Then you're going to, after it's all fused, you're going to come in and you're going to cut around that square so that you are for sure that the fusible goes all the way to the edge.
Perfect. Now, what do you think about when you pick out these fabrics?
I am looking for bold, graphic fabrics that people can potentially use for an assortment of things. Like these could be eyeballs, they could be the centers of flowers, they could be car wheels. So I give them fabric that is probably going to result in successful compositions.
Look at this. You get like 10,000 bangs for your buck on this one.
You've got flowers, you've got paw prints, you can make, these could be tree trunks or flower stems, or all kinds of things.
How fun. I mean, they've got to love this. Just love this.
Yeah, and I take these, so once they're all prepped, and I'm going to I prepare a long table and put all the fabric lined out so they can see it, just a little bit of each one, right? And then they can come and select what fabrics they want.
I'll tell you, any quilter would just like, oh, love this to pieces. How exciting.
One thing I tell my students or participants that seems kind of odd is conserve your fabric, right? I don't know how many times I've had someone cut this circle out right here, and they're like, why did you do that? And then I'd say, well, I know, it was so hard too. It was difficult to do. Like, conserve your fabric because there are other people that want to use it too.
People following you, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm currently in the middle of making a baby quilt for little Ari, and his mother is from New Zealand and his father's from Alaska. And these are some of the quilt blocks that participants built in the workshop. And this is a community. This is a McCarthy community, you know, kind of my hometown in a way. And so these people have made a lot of these quilt blocks.
What about this here, the writing on it?
So it's important everybody signs their block. And what I do is I'll take a solid piece of fabric. It can be muslin. I'll put freezer paper on the back, and that is for them to practice signing their little message, their name. I guess the next thing I think we should talk about.
Yeah, I think this is brilliant.
Okay, so. Additional prep here. So you've made your backgrounds, you've made your fusibles, and now you're going to prep the placemat size. You can use paper sacks, right?
Yeah.
This is packing paper that I ironed and just cut up. So now
you can dig that out from the last box you got, right?
That's where this came from.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So I ironed it and I cut it basically placemat size. Everybody gets one of these. Everyone selects their solid fabric for the background, and they're going to build their little quilt. They're going to take their fusible, they're going to cut their shapes out, and they're going to lay them on here. And then I usually have them peel at that point.
Okay,
right?
Once they have their composition?
Yes.
Okay.
Peel it, and then they're going to take this, and they're going to walk over.
But what about the white?
The parchment paper.
Yeah, do you have that over at the ironing surface?
I do.
Oh, okay.
And then just place that down on top. I usually have them iron the top, then I flip it over, iron the back. At that point, they will find that they didn't take all the fusible off.
Right.
And then they'll go back and take the fusible off, and then they'll iron the back again and then the front, right? And then we put them all together and take photographs and celebrate our work.
You know what's so great about this, Maria, is so organized. I mean, while this is simple to us quilters, okay, how do you take a group of people that know nothing about this and give them confidence? And the fact that you have born some quilters is pretty exciting.
Yes.
So I want to take a look at a couple other of these, if you wouldn't mind, and tell us about them. Ricky, you need to get in here, okay?
Yeah, so these are, this is that fabric we looked at over there.
Oh, yeah.
But so they just made these, because this is a couple that are New Zealand, Alaskan couple, a lot of the blocks represent flowers from Alaska or from New Zealand.
Now let's talk about this because you got a lot of layers going on here.
Right. I recommend less than 4.
Okay.
And if you can avoid, what they did here is they glued their sky down. If you can discourage them from doing that, minimal layers is better.
Don't you love this?
I do love this. I will say that I have at least learned with multiple layers of fusible, and I do wash my quilts, the more you wash it, and if this is for a baby, it's probably going to get washed, but the more you wash it, the softer it really gets.
And the reason I want is for the quilter.
Yes,
is that
of course.
when you're going through a lot of layers, and you said there's other fusibles that might be better.
that might be lighter, and all that. So it just depends how big you get. But yeah, they can get pretty stiff.
Yes.
Okay, what's this one?
It's a little bird on a birdhouse.
And who did these? Your students?
Well, these are just
We're
members of
looking
the
at
community.
it upside down. You got, they're laughing at you. Said, what is it?
Well, because I asked if this is upside down.
Yeah, these are all just.
Oh, I love this one.
And kids can make these quilt blocks too, and they a lot of times really, they don't self-censor, and it's they come up with some really fun things.
So I mean, you could also go into a kid's classroom and do this too.
Sure, absolutely.
I adore this. Thank you.
I need to rewind because I have questions. So this is rewinding all the way back to my segment whenever we were talking about strip sets. You did a lot of straight strip sets, and I was talking to the audience, and one of them says, but when I sew straight strips together, it starts going, Do you ever have that problem when you're sewing all of these strips together where it kind of bends?
No, I don't.
Because?
Because I iron after every seam, And yeah, I think it's mostly about all the ironing I do.
ironing
And I will manipulate.
Do you set them?
Yes.
Okay.
I set the seam, and then I'm going to open it. I'm going to iron it again, and if it's starting to torque, I'm going to manipulate it.
Yeah.
Keep it straight all the way through. Don't wait till you've sewn 10 strips and then try to straighten it. Good idea. Now, you like to teach, and you are teaching and traveling. And you guys, if you're interested in having Maria come, you like to actually do extended teaching sessions if possible, where you'll do, what, 3, 4, 5 days?
Yeah,
even?
I like to go deep.
Yeah,
I would think that would be the best for
Yeah.
you, especially when we're into things like this,
Yes.
right? Yes, love it.
Yay.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Well, I'm going to take her class, so there you
There
go.
you go. Everybody, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Maria, for such a wonderful lesson
you.
for everybody. Alex, thank you so much for sharing your reconstructed quilt that that Julie Silber has in her collection.
I can't wait for Julie to see that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Everyone, thank you for joining us. I hope you've had a fun day. And remember, it's a new day
Every day.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah, it is about
Don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss the after set.
I hear you have a really special place that you go, a cabin that's, what, about 300 miles from your house?
Yeah, we have a cabin that we spend a good part of our summer in McCarthy, Alaska, which is in the Wrangell-St. Elias National Park, which is the largest park in the American park system, and it butts up against the largest preserve in Canada. So it's the biggest amount of wildlands in the world.
Wow.
And before it was a park, there were 2 mining towns, Kennecott, which was a copper mining town, and then McCarthy, which was a gold mining town. It was kind of the little city of sin down from the company town where they mined copper. And we own a 1920s gold miners cabin.
Wow.
And in the back of that cabin, originally there was a garage, and I received funding from the Sustainable Arts Foundation, which funds writers and artists with families, to purchase the supplies to build the studio along with the solar system so that I could have an iron out there.
Yeah.
So, which is awesome. You know, the studio is kind of fun because I call it a plein air studio because the planks aren't butted up, so the breeze comes through and the sunlight comes through. It's really nice. And
You wouldn't want to be there in the winter then, I suppose.
no, it is not a winter studio. The home is a winter. You can live there in this.
Okay, but not in the garage.
Nope.
Or in the studio.
Yeah, and so I work there in that little studio, and I also teach, and I'm part of an organization called the Wrangell Mountain Center, which is a nonprofit that connects artists and scientists, people,
How far is that from your cabin?
It's across the street.
Oh, that's
Really?
a nice
So
commute.
this little art community is
It
all like
is.
remote up in this wilderness
Yeah,
area?
and people come from all over the world to do research. Well, you know, we're at ground zero as far as climate change is concerned. We can visibly see glaciers melting because of climate change.
Now they have scholarships to go up there?
Well, we have an artist residency program. There's a couple of ways that quilt makers could come and visit me and McCarthy. One is that we have an artist in residency program through the Wrangell Mountain Center, and you can find that on our website, the Wrangell Mountain Center website. And we sponsor 4 to 6 artists. There is a small preference to textile artists. We almost always fill one of those spots with someone who works with fiber. And I also teach workshops out there. And what we do is we go out into place, document it, and then come back and try and recreate it in our quilts.
That sounds fabulous.
Wonderful.
I think I want to do that.
I know, right?
Maria, thank you so much for sharing your talent and your passion with us today.
Thank you
It has
very
been
much.
a lot of fun.
And watch out for one of your quilts. Our producer has her eyes on
Ooh.
it.
I would love for that to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.